Start stream. Go live. And we're live here on Facebook. Like to welcome those listening in podcast land. Also, like to welcome my buddy Rich. Rich, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mike. It was another day off
Nice.
for me, even though I got to go in for a little while tomorrow morning to help the team get caught up. But it shouldn't be that bad, though. Shouldn't be that bad. And then we get trivia night. We get trivia night on Saturday night. So
Yeah, I did the math,
okay,
and I have 12, or I have 13 days left of vacation to take that I have to take by July.
by July. See, you have a little bit more time to play with. I've
I
got like
do.
3 more days to take, and I got to do it by March 1st.
I'm trying to decide if I'm going to take like a mid-spring motorcycle ride
Hmm.
out to Sturgis or something.
Cool, cool. Is it starting to get warmer up there in where
Dude,
in
it's
your
been
neck of
in
the
the
woods?
40s like all week. I don't have snow in my yard anymore.
I know. I've still got some snow in the yard. There's some
Yeah, you guys
patches.
got
There's some
like,
stubborn patches.
but you guys had like 2 days in a row that you ended up getting like 35 inches of snow or something.
We did. There's still a couple patches in the yard that still haven't melted away yet, but most of it is gone.
But
So I'm glad that we've had the warmer weather.
I did hear some bad news.
And what's that?
Apparently, in the next 10 days, there's if the current forecast holds true, there is a
Okay.
massive swing, and we could get back in the frigid temperatures and see lots of snow again.
I'm gonna go with I'll believe it when I see it. I'm hoping I don't see it though.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't want to see it either. Rich, we're doing all of this banter, but we got a show to do this week
We
because
do.
we
We do.
have to talk about. We have some football to talk about, and I have an esports update to talk about. Rich,
Yeah.
what else do we got?
That's good. We're going to go into the NASCAR corner, and this week on our season preview, we're going to be looking at driver lineup changes, new drivers in new cars, as well as we're going to give you a preview of the Busch Clash or Clash at the Coliseum, and talk a little bit of fantasy NASCAR because the site is up and running, and you can join our fantasy NASCAR. So we'll let you know how you can do that before we wrap up the show this week. Mike, all that and more, but what do we got to do first?
We got to roll the intro. Broadcasting live from somewhere in Iowa. This is Balls and Sticks, the podcast, with your hosts, Mike and Rich. And we're back. Okay, Rich. So I had a thing that made me realize something, made me
Okay,
think
what's
about
that?
something. At the first year that we did our show, we
Mhm.
decided that the Daytona 500 that when NASCAR started, that was going to be our season. Our season started, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Because I think we started doing a show, and I think we did our first show, and it was on Talladega. The Talladega weekend is when we started season one, and I think when we were actually keeping track of doing seasons and an episode count, I think we established when season one would end, when season two would start, it would be at the Daytona 500.
Okay. Do you remember the date of our first show?
I think it was sometime in April because the Talladega is normally in April.
Okay, you are correct,
Okay.
April 21st,
Hmm.
2018. Wow.
Wow. Crazy to think we've been doing this together side by side every week and then transitioning to remotely once you moved up to northwest Iowa.
Yeah.
So and kept it going.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Um, I'm looking at it like, I kind of want to listen to our old shows.
Hmm.
Like, so we have 50 hours of episodes on Blog Talk Radio. If you didn't know, that's where our first few seasons, even. It actually, so I didn't realize it, but we did episodes on there until 2020.
Hmm.
So just before COVID hit, we were still on Blog Talk Radio. Crazy.
For sure. For sure.
I
For
loved
sure.
it. I miss like there were good things about Blog Talk Radio. I'm really glad we're not. As the biggest reason is because uh, being on Blog Talk, we were limited to like half-hour shows, weren't we?
I think that they let us. I think that the we found a loophole and it allowed us to go
Right.
up to 45 minutes. But at third, I think it like at 30 minutes, that's when we had a 2 minute warning whistle
Yeah.
to wrap up the show because then we'd be going into overtime and we could have the episode abruptly cut off because Blog Talk Radio only allowed us to go up to about 45 minutes max.
Man. Yeah. This is crazy. Like, sorry, I'm on the site and I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, this is great. Like, I miss some of the stuff I miss. Oh.
Yeah.
Wait.
And you know, all throughout these times that we've had a poll question every single week with
Yeah.
sometimes where I've almost wondered in the back of my mind, how long are we going to keep this whole poll question thing going? And we still find a way to keep it going.
Yeah. Um, it's crazy to me because I'm looking at it and I forget that we had not only did we have the that whole thing, but we also had like so one of the best things about it is that Blog Talk let us have call-ins.
Yeah, and we had a call in 1 week.
We did. It the guy I don't remember what the guy really had anything to say. Man, I kind of want to. Anyway, all that to say, I'm glad we've been doing this. It's been so much fun. It's like since 2018, man. And how little did we know that it was going to provide us with a way to just stay in touch when we didn't even know that we weren't going to be hanging out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Okay, so with that, we've done all that stuff. We're good to go on there. Let's actually get into the show, which means we have to do our poll question, Rich.
We do this week's poll question. We're on the entree side of the bracket, and it was corned beef hash and Canadian bacon this week, Mike.
Wow. That one was pretty easy for me.
Okay, where'd you vote with?
I voted for Canadian bacon. I hate corned beef hash.
I don't. For me, like I've had, when I think of like Canadian bacon, the only time that I really like it is
On pizza?
Yeah, on a pizza. You forgot about pizza. I was going with a breakfast entrees, like with a like on an egg McMuffin. Um, oddly enough, but I voted for corned beef hash because I mean, just if it's I've never had corned beef hash, but I'd like to try it. And I just wanted with Canadian bacon, I normally need to eat it with something to make it kind of palatable for me. Just
Okay.
taking Canadian bacon on a plate in front of me, I'm gonna ask, well, what am I gonna eat this with?
Yeah.
Where corned beef hash, I've got everything right there on the plate. It is its own entree, not something that's on the plate with what you ordered. Where that's how I interpret Canadian bacon.
I totally get that. I really do. But no, I'm a give me give me Canadian bacon. I just don't like corned beef hash. I just don't like it. It's gross.
Okay. All right, Mike. So where did the votes fall this week?
Well, Rich, it this is as close as polls get. One vote
Okay.
decided it.
All right.
It was 9 votes, so 5-4. Canadian bacon.
Canadian bacon.
Those
All
that picked
right.
corned beef hash: Sue Hart, AJ Hendricks, Rich Hendricks, and Mikey O'Roderer. Now, Rich, because AJ picked it, are you guys gonna have
Mhm.
it? Are you gonna pick up a can tomorrow and serve it for breakfast?
Probably not because the hash in there is hash browns. I'm assuming,
Mm,
even though I never had it, and hash browns really isn't that very
yeah.
carb friendly. So no, we probably won't be having it.
See, so for your diet, the only one you could eat is the Canadian bacon.
Yeah, on the diet, yeah. If I was sticking to having a low carb diet, it would be Canadian bacon. Would easily
Speaking
be
of
the
which,
choice.
your Canadian bacon people are me, Mike Ehart, uh, Kayla Nielsen,
Okay.
Jordan Stroop, Solomon Stroop, and Ashley Linguist.
All right. Thank you for everybody that voted. Mike, tell them where they can find this week's poll question
Uh,
and what it is.
so this week's poll question, what a lot of people will say are the worst two breakfast cereals of all time: grape
I
nuts,
would I would beg to differ, but
grape
that's a topic
nuts,
for next week.
and raisin bran.
Yes, grape nuts and raisin bran.
And you can catch that at facebook.com/groups/fans of balls and sticks. Yeah, I no. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't think this is gonna get a lot of votes because does anybody like either of these?
You'll find out our opinions on both cereals next week. We gotta save something for next week on the
Yep.
poll side.
Okay. So this last week, we had our conference championship recap. Let's do
Yeah,
that, Rich.
that
Rich.
that's this week conference championship recap because it was championship Sunday last week
Yeah.
in the NFL. Mike, game number one, who played and what was the score?
So it was the Chiefs versus the Ravens. The Chiefs won 17-10. Rich, you picked the Ravens. I picked the Chiefs. So score one for me. Rich, the second game was the Lions versus the 49ers. How did we pick and what was the outcome?
All right, Mike, you picked the Lions. I picked the Niners. It was 34-31, San Francisco. So for the playoffs, you are 8-4 going into the Super Bowl. I am 7-5. So for next week, because you have done better in the playoffs, you will have your choice of the Super Bowl, of the team that you're going to pick for the Super Bowl. But we will hold that discussion for next week.
Yep.
We need something to talk about with there being no NFL this week because who watches the Pro Bowl?
Yeah, nobody.
Yeah. So Mike, Chiefs and the Ravens, 17-10. Were you kind of surprised by the outcome, or is this starting to turn into don't pick against don't pick against Patrick Mahomes until he loses?
I think that that's been the case for many years, and I think that that's where we're at. So I think it's don't bet against Patrick Mahomes. But on top of it, the fact that it was that close of a game doesn't really describe the game all that well, because when you look at how terrible, and I do mean terrible, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
how terrible the the Ravens played. I'm sorry, It should have been way worse.
Yeah, from what I can remember of the game, I didn't get to watch all of it. I got to watch most of it. Um, I thought that there were a couple of penalties that went uncalled that could have favored Baltimore. Um, the one that seems likely to me that where I was going at the TV saying that should have been pass interference. The guy got bumped while the ball was still in the air. Was the interception that he threw into the end zone. But at the same time, it was triple coverage by the time as the ball was getting closer and closer to the receiver in the end zone. But with it being triple coverage, there was some contact in the end zone that bumped him off his route. But even if he wasn't bumped out of his route, he was still throwing in the triple coverage. Yeah. So even though the receiver was streaking across the field, waved his hand, and that's where Lamar went with the ball. That was a poor decision right there.
Yeah, the game itself, they did a terrible job.
The defense did his part,
right,
but the offense just could not. The offense couldn't come up with anything, and I was also surprised to learn after the game, like they only ran the ball. I think it was like 8 or 9 times, and their offense is built on running the football.
Yeah.
So why do you totally change up your offensive identity and turn into a pass happy offense in probably the biggest game of the year with the Super Bowl on the line? That's what the Ravens did. It didn't work out for them, but their defense, you can't fault the defense. They did their job.
Yeah. And again, are we seeing the limits of, and the biggest problem being, Lamar Jackson? Is he really the king that we all thought he was?
That game shows that maybe he's not quite ready, because the team that blew out the Texans and the team that was playing the Chiefs were two totally different teams.
Yeah.
And I have no idea why they didn't keep the same game plan from Houston and take it against Mahomes and the Chiefs. But the Chiefs play good defense too, so you're not always going to get a perfectly officiated game, and those no calls that don't happen, you can't let that affect how you're operating on offense. And I think that could have been in play for them.
Yep.
Could have caused them to play the game like they did.
Yeah.
Lions were up 20, was it 24-7?
Yeah, because
at the half.
The question was raised, Lions fans, how often will you think about how badly they blew it? 24/7.
Yeah. I mean, I know that the discussion around that after that couple days after that game was that did Dan Campbell, do you fault Dan Campbell for rolling the dice and going for it on 4th downs one too many times, and it just not working out on this play, just not working out this week?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer there. I really don't. So,
well, I think the first time they went for it on 4th down and failed, that was a catchable ball by by the receiver. It went right in his chest. Goff put it where he needed to put it. He just couldn't complete the catch. The second time in the 4th quarter when they were going for it, that was good defense. They disguised their defensive look, and they just had no answer. That was a great defensive coverage.
But again, fumbles, unforced and forced errors. The fumble was forced, but that's fine.
That's the hallmark of a good defense, though. Sometimes a defensive play can turn the game around.
It is, and I'm not mad at it. But it's the unforced errors. It's the dropped passes to guys who are wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Every day they're wide open. You can't blame Rich. How did the Lions get to this point?
By being aggressive.
And by going for it on 4th down, right?
Yep.
Why would you take that away from him? Why would you
No.
change your gameplay in this situation?
Yep. And that's why I can't fault Campbell for doing it. It isn't like he was rolling the dice. This was the first time that he had been doing it. That was a hallmark of his play calling or strategy all year.
Right.
The Lions played to their strength. They're more known as for their offense
Yeah.
than
So
their defense. So why not go for it?
if that's the case, if that's how it's going, then on top of it, by the way, on top of it, we still have to look at uh, if a lot of what caused them to be in positions to do that was poor performance by the receivers. The receivers let Jared Goff down. They let Dan Campbell down. They let the entire city of Detroit down. I just there's no words. I don't think it had much to do with Dan Campbell, and it had everything to do with unforced errors and bad play, as opposed to the Ravens game where the unforced errors were penalties. By the way, those defensive penalties in the Ravens game is what caused that game to go that route. Because if there was that one drive where they got 45 yards on 3 defensive penalties, unsportsmanlike conduct, roughing the passer, that stuff. Like, I'm sorry, if you're gonna if you're gonna argue that the Ravens had a good defense, sorry to go back to that game. But if you're going to argue that those guys are going to had a good defense and the defense did their job, except they didn't. They shot the team in the foot by these 15-yard penalties that kept drives alive that should have been dead.
Yeah, I did want. I was glad you brought up the whole unnecessary roughness penalty. The one that comes to mind is the Roquan Smith intentionally committing offsides.
Yep.
But he just bulldozed into a guard and pushed him backwards.
Yep.
So instead of it just being offsides or false start, it was unsportsmanlike conduct, unnecessary roughness.
Yep.
So the first thing that popped into my head when he did that is that, all right, if you're going to intentionally cross the line and do more than you needed to do, why not do that right up against the center? So you know who's under center?
Yeah.
The quarterback. So why not cause 2 people to fall down and maybe Patrick Mahomes lands on his ankle, gets something wrong with the center landing on him for pushing 2 people back. If you're going to get a 15-yard penalty for committing a false start and causing a lineman to fall backwards, take out the center and maybe have him land on the quarterback as well.
Yeah, the desire to go to that was terrible. I mean, I get why they do that penalty, but there's no reason to do it in a way that's going to cost you 15 yards. Maybe if you step in and you just step it over the line, make sure it's obvious, do a swim move to get past Patrick Mahomes, fine. That gives you your 5 yards. If the team knows somebody's going to be doing that, run around the guard. Run around the tight end.
Run around the tackle.
Yeah, run around the tackle and the tight end and be outside of that area so you're not going to touch anybody. And you're unabated to the quarterback. Instantly ball it's down. Have your cornerback run at an angle to the quarterback. Why isn't that what you would do? Why would what you do be have a lineman tackle a lineman?
Yep. It was an inside linebacker. Roquan Smith ran into the guard harder than he needed to.
So that's, again, and I'm not saying that's an intentional penalty that you're taking, but you're taking it to a point where you're going to get the extra 15. You're going to get the extra 10 yards.
Yeah. instead of a 5-yard penalty to make it 1st and 10, it was a 15-yard penalty and it's 1st and 10.
Yeah.
But they got, so yeah. I still thought the Ravens played good defense, but yeah, you are right. There were a couple of times where either holdings, there were some costly penalties that sustained drives, which gave the Chiefs more time to take time off the clock and
Yep.
put them in good field position, and they took advantage of it. So it'll be the Chiefs and the 49ers next week, as well as giving you who we think is gonna win the game with lunch on the line between Mike and I. We're going to take a look and see which team has the advantage. And we're just going to take some of the position groups: quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, the defense, secondary, special teams, etc. So
we also
tune in
have
next week.
We also next week is also our gambling special, as we
Yeah,
always
yeah.
look at prop bets. So
Yeah.
join us for the prop bet because I love the prop bets. Those are great. So we'll get into those next week. Okay, Rich. Let's go. Let's talk some more NFL news.
Mhm.
We are basically, the coaching carousel has come to a stop. The music has stopped playing, and there are people that don't have seats. The game of musical chairs will resume next year.
That's right. Because this week we learned that the final 2 spots got filled as the Seahawks hired Mike McDonald away from the Ravens.
Yep.
And Dan Quinn is the new Commanders head coach in Landover, Maryland.
Man,
So, Mike, the 3 questions we got to ask with the coaching carousel now being over is who made the best hire, which team maybe missed the mark or didn't hire the right guy in our opinion, and maybe who's on the hot seat for 2024. Because we've kind of touched on it in the past, I'm not going to include McCarthy, Sirianni, and Eberflus of the Bears, Eagles, and Cowboys respectively.
Yep.
Because they were not fired, they were just retained, and we've already voiced our opinions, saying that we don't know if that was the right move, or we've already talked on those. We're just going to focus on the people that dismissed their head coaches and hired new ones.
Sure. Who made the best hire? I think that's pretty obvious, right?
Okay.
The Chargers?
Who is it, Mike? I would give it to the Chargers as well.
I mean, you got Jim Harbaugh. You got the hottest name, at least hottest name in college.
Well, no, ever since he left the Niners to go to Michigan, he's been ever since maybe year 3, and ever since I think he got 2 years in Michigan where there wasn't rumors that let's try and get Harbaugh back, or let's try and bring him in for an interview.
And he should have been. He brought an okay team to the Super Bowl. They weren't a great team. I don't think that team was as good as the team that's going to the Super Bowl this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think that one's pretty obvious. I think I think where it gets interesting is the second best. But I think you and I are going to agree on this one too.
Okay. Who's that one, Mike?
The Raiders.
Yeah,
I was
glad
the right
with
decision.
The Raiders.
I mean,
they
technically,
made the right decision. They had the players wanted him back, and I like what they've done in developing his staff.
Yeah.
He has very little coaching experience, coming up as a former player and as a position coach, not a coordinator. And they've gone and hired Cliff Kingsbury, a former head coach in his own right, to be the offensive coordinator.
Yep.
And Marvin Lewis, a veteran defensive head coach.
Yeah.
And longtime coach of the Bengals, to be the assistant head coach. So he's going to have people to lean on.
I will say the hard part about that, there's some bad about that. Because, and again, we're not talking Vegas people. We're talking your Oakland fans, your LA fans, your fans of the Raiders, because I don't think anybody in Vegas really cares all that much. But
fine. We'll skip it. We'll pretend that they do. Of those that call themselves Raiders fans, now you have two guys that have good experience as head coaches in the NFL that are now sitting behind basically a rookie head coach. Does he have to be looking over his shoulder for this next year on whether or not those guys are going to be going for his spot?
I don't think so. I think that he's got the right attitude. He's bringing them in not because the team isn't bringing them in to support him. He was the one that he brought them in to give him support, not the other way around where the team was bringing them in.
Yeah.
Bringing them in to help with decision making.
Okay, I can go with that. Head scratchers.
Head scratchers for me would have to be Dan Quinn in Washington.
Yeah. To me, that's the biggest miss to mark. Rich, I'll let you take the glory. Who did they want in Washington to be the leader of their team?
I thought there were two people. If the rumor mill was true, they had two people in mind to get that job. Ben Johnson in Detroit and Bobby Slowick in Houston.
Yeah.
And both of those guys decided to stay with their teams.
100%. Now, here's the problem. So now you bring in Dan Quinn, right? So he's going to completely revamp who's under him. Generally, that's what happens. Rarely do guys get held over year in and year out after a new head coach comes in. Normally, they want their coordinators. They want their guys. Great. Fine. Dan Quinn wants that. What happens if either of those two guys say, hey, Washington, or let's say they have a terrible year and those two guys become available that they wanted?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm the Commanders, see you, Dan Quinn.
Yep. That's what Houston did. They had an outside the box hire in David Culley. Nobody expected David Culley. He was I think when he got hired, when the names were being announced of who they're interviewing, I think David Culley was probably seen as a Rudy Rule interviewee, and 100%. He got the job.
Yeah,
he got the job. He got the job because because it was a team in turmoil because you had the Deshaun Watson allegations coming forward, him being thrown out and him getting suspended for the year. It was a job probably nobody wanted.
Yep.
And so they obviously did terrible.
Yep.
Without Deshaun Watson available and not being able to trade him because he was suspended. And then year two, so they let go of Culley. They bring in
Lovie Smith.
Lovie Smith, who was the defensive coordinator on that terrible Texans team. And he does better by 2 or 3 wins, but then he gets let go, and they bring in DeMeco Ryans, who seems to be the long-term fit there.
So, if Dan Campbell is not who you want,
or if Ben Johnson or Slowick are more ready in their own opinions to leave their organizations, I could see Dan Quinn being let go.
So, why did you hire Dan Quinn?
I don't know. In my opinion,
here's my bigger question.
Okay.
Who have we been talking about the last 5 years?
Probably Eric Bieniemy, and that's who I thought they should have just given the job to.
Give the job to the guy who deserves. I don't know. On this list, by the way, of guys that got hired, 2 of them are guys that I can agree with over Eric Bieniemy.
Okay.
Now, I understand.
Besides Harbaugh, who's the other guy?
Antonio Pierce.
Okay.
I understand. You got to make sure he fits whoever fit. Did we even hear that he went interviewing?
I believe that if I remember correctly, I think the only job that he got interviewed for was Washington.
Yeah. And why didn't? If by the way, if you're going to give him the interview, give him the job. Now,
And I think that's what they could have. That's what they should have done. Because even if they're going to follow on the path of, you know what, he's a interim coach without being an interim coach, give him his shot.
yeah.
Give him his shot. If he
Here's the
meets
problem,
expectations, he gets year 2 or 3. If he doesn't, he's let go, and you can finally close the book of a guy that's who's coached under great coaches, and has gotten a chance to finally be a play caller, so he can finally put that thing to bed of, well, he's a good offensive coordinator, but he hasn't been a play caller.
I got a problem with that though, Rich.
What's that?
And so this is why I'm going to answer my own question that I proposed. Why didn't they hire Eric Bieniemy? I'm going to do it.
All right.
Who was designing their offense this year?
Eric Bieniemy.
How'd that offense do this year?
Not very good.
Rich, I'm going to change it. I'm going to change the scenario, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You're weed whacker. Let's say you got your lawnmower. That's your head coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does a great job. The lawnmower gives out. You bring in your weed whacker, whose job it is. So the lawnmower's job is to make sure the grass gets cut, but the weed whacker's job is to make sure that the edges, like you use it to make sure the edges and it's just you put that shine on it. You take it that next level, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Your weed whacker does a terrible job.
I wouldn't say, if comparing in your analogy, I wouldn't say that Bieniemy did a terrible job.
Okay, how did the
Right.
offense do?
He didn't.
Does your yard still look like crap?
Yeah. The
Okay, if
record-wise-
your yard still look, but the offense didn't look good. The offense didn't look good this year. So your yard still looks like crap. Are you going to promote your weed whacker to your lawnmower? Even though
Houston
your yard
did.
still looks like crap?
Houston did when they
Yeah.
gave Lovie Smith the job.
And did it
For
work
a
for
year.
him?
No, it didn't.
So
No, it didn't.
why are you going to do that? What do you expect by bringing in your offensive coordinator, the guy that's you brought in because you thought he was going to be able to revamp your offense and get it to where it needs to be? And yet, he didn't do it. He didn't improve it at all. The second worst team in the league, and are now have the second pick in the draft. Why are you going to take that guy and trust him to do one better for you?
Because if he fails as the head coach, if he doesn't meet expectations as the head coach, carrying over that he wasn't able to take the offense and make it better you thought he would do with the hire, you have a reason to let him go and go in another direction when maybe Slowick or Johnson is finally ready to move on.
I don't know if I'm buying it, Rich. I'm sorry.
I
just
that's just my initial thought.
I think
That's
you're
my
right
initial thought.
that it gives you the opportunity. You're not getting the guy you want. You're not hiring a long-term guy. Give the shot to a guy that's already in the building, that knows the system, knows everybody. I get that part, but
And a guy that a lot of
somebody's
the
got to play
media
devil's
is-
advocate, right?
Yeah, and a guy that's been where a lot of the media has been wondering, and us included, why isn't this guy getting the job?
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about who missed the mark. That's going to be the Commanders with Dan Quinn. 2024. The pilot light is on.
Mm-hmm.
The hand is on the stove to turn the burner on. Who is sitting on that hot seat?
For me, the one guy that shapes out is Nick Sirianni in Philadelphia. How do you have a 12? How do you start your year 12-3, and then
Yeah.
go on to lose five of your last 6 games, which
Including a
caused
playoff
you
game.
including the playoff game, where you were the number one overall seed, would have had home field advantage to going down all the way down to the 5th seed, and you dropped the division.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that they brought on Vic Fangio to be the defensive coordinator,
Yep.
who has head coaching experience,
Yep.
and Kellen Moore to run the offense, who's been around, who's made his rounds on the coaching interview circuit for head coaching jobs as well. So you
100%.
have 2 in-house guys that could be elevated to interim coach if Sirianni can't find the magic that he had 2 years ago when he took the team to the Super Bowl, or can't find the magic of what was working right in weeks 1 through 13 of this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I mean, we've mentioned the other 2 guys that I think are already on, whose seats I think the burners are already on for Sirianni and Matt Eberflus. That's the other one that I think
Okay.
the burners are already on. They might be super low, but the burners are already on. They are already on a hot seat. The thing that Eberflus, here's the deal: if they retain, so it cools off a ton if they draft a new quarterback.
All right.
It heats up if they continue to go with Justin Fields.
All right,
If they go
I
with-
think that's fair.
If they
I think
go with
that's fair.
Justin Fields, you're saying you trust. You're saying that the quarterback and the head coach together, you trust this as your winning combination. They just need to get over the hump. And you're saying you expect, I would say, playoffs or bust next year if they keep Justin Fields. Playoffs or hit the road jack. Because Justin Fields, then his contract is at the point, isn't this his 5th year? Or is this his 4th year? This is his 4th year. So they then have to pick up his 5th year option? No, they're not going to do that if they're bad. They're not going to pick up his 5th year option. There's no need to. Or you pick up his 5th year option and you put him out there hoping that you can trade him off or whatnot. Get him traded off and do something with it. If they draft a quarterback and Justin Fields is goodbye, now you have that you're giving Matt Eberflus 2 years, at least 2 years. And if you don't, then you're dumb. Now, I think if you draft a quarterback, that coach should have 4 years. Because then you don't pick up the 5th year option. And then you start over. Wash it clean. But if that's what they're doing, fine. And then I think the third one that's on, but I guess I will open the door to let you say your piece on what you said, what I just said.
Yeah, with Eberflus, I think that the way that they played a lot harder those last 5-6 weeks once they got Montez Sweat. You can agree on that, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So if they can continue that upward trajectory with a full year of Montez Sweat and probably additions to the draft and free agency, whether they draft a quarterback or keep Fields, I think that while there's some pressure I think that his burner's been turned on, and there's probably going to be some pressure this year, that I don't think it needs to be a playoff or bust and he gets fired. I just think that they need to continue showing progress. So I think as long as he can win 8+ and
Rich,
continue to show that he's going in the right direction, I would give him another year.
we were one game out of the playoffs. By the way, we were one tie away from the playoffs. You realize that, right?
I did not. I
guess
saw the
we were-
playoffs as a little bit more far-fetched.
We were a
actually
tie
happened.
and a loss for Green Bay in those last 2 weeks, and we would have made the playoff. The Bears make the playoffs. The last 2 weeks, if the Bears, if the Packers and Vikings tie, the Bears could have made the playoffs.
Okay. So that's just my opinion. They continue to show growth in your win totals, and if that means a playoff spot in year 4 of year 3 of Eberflus, great. But if the win totals are and the performance on the field is continually getting better, which I think it could, I don't think that you need to fire him going into what would be. I think that he can get a 4th year, and then year 4, that's where you're looking at we need to take the playoffs. And then we might have to find somebody else to take us over the hump.
And then finally, I think the last hot seat, we've already mentioned him once this show, Mike McCarthy down in Dallas. I think the biggest, Jerry Jones has already stated that he's on the hot seat. And if you don't realize it, look at what he said when he said that, or the fact that they haven't already got him an extension. And he only has 1 year left on his contract. Jerry Jones doesn't let contracts run out because he knows that kind of puts him over a barrel to either put up or shut up, as you will. And with 1 year left on a contract, if they don't have a contract done by the playoffs, I think that, or not by the playoffs, by week 1 of next year, I think you're pretty close to saying, all but saying, he's 100% on the hot seat, and we're not taking him back next year unless he wins games in the playoffs.
Okay.
So,
and I'm going to give you one other name for maybe on the hot seat, because very rarely do you see only one job come open or 2 jobs come open. But I'm going to go with Dennis Allen down in New Orleans.
Okay.
He got the job. He got elevated because I think they wanted to keep some continuity from the Sean Payton era. Yeah. But this team almost operates as if they still have Sean Payton and Drew Brees coaching and playing on the field, as far as restructuring contracts, trading draft picks to kind of maximize. We're going to win the Super Bowl, which I think is great that you want to have the best team available for a winnable division. But when that attitude of roster building strategy is only getting you 8 or 9 wins, and you're winning the division with a sub 500 record and getting knocked out in round 1, eventually you need to cut ties and realize that it's time to rebuild and get plenty of room underneath the cap space without restructuring contracts and kicking those contracts down the road that we pay out in future years.
Yep. I think you're right. That is a big hot seat. And so I have one more name to add to that before we move on, because we got to get into the NASCAR corner.
That's fine.
We have some picks to make. Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn being on the hot seat. Okay.
I'm not saying he's already that the seat's hot already, but I think the pilot light is lit. This is the definition of the pilot light is lit, and a hand is on the knob.
Okay. And we already touched on why we think that he could be on the hot seat, because we identified as maybe like a head scratcher or a possible not the best move. All right, Mike. So let's go ahead and go into the NASCAR corner. And Mike, go ahead and give our sponsor shout out, and we'll move right into the NASCAR corner.
NASCAR corner presented as always by Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated, Moline, Illinois. Check them out on 5th Avenue for all your sports memorabilia needs. That once again, that is Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated, 5th Avenue, Moline, or
on their eBay store. So, Rich, this week we have the Busch Clash happening. With that, we have to make picks. This is for who gets the pick for the Daytona 500. The only way to get points in there. So Rich and I, if you're new to the show or you haven't watched or you forget how Rich and I do NASCAR, non-points races are just for fun, just picking for fun. No actual points are awarded. We keep track every year. You get 2 points if you get a win. You get 1 point for having a drive if your driver is ahead but didn't win the race at the end of the race for the year. But no points are allotted for non-points win or non-points races unless you get a win. If you get a win, you get 1 point. That's it. It's only 1 point, and it's only if your guy wins. So, Rich, for non-playoff, who are you gonna pick?
You know what? I'm going to go with my favorite driver, the number one. I'm going to go with Ross Chastain. So I'm going to watch this race from start to finish. I'd love to see my favorite driver win.
You want to eat some watermelon on
Sunday. I'd love to see a watermelon get smashed on the on the oval that was built on the LA Memorial Coliseum.
Yeah. So I am actually going to pick my driver, the double ones, or number 11, Denny Hamlin.
All right. Now I know we said in our kind of any other reason for Denny Hamlin before?
I mean, he's a pretty good driver.
He is.
He's got a lot of good short track experience, and that would be my big thing. I'd love to see him win. So.
All right, so you can catch that race on Friday. Practices will be on FS1 on tomorrow on Saturday, and you can catch the race starting at 5:30 Eastern, where you'll see the last chance qualifying for the race. You got to win your way into the race.
And they have that, but they also have. Don't they have the? Let me look. Now I gotta look.
And then the actual main event, I think, starts at 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Do they have the heat races tomorrow then?
I think it's the practices and the heat races are Saturday with the last chance qualifier coming on Sunday.
It is Friday, so it would be the heat races are tomorrow night. You can catch those on FS1. So the heat races at 8 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. For qualifying heat races. Now that's got to be Eastern time, isn't it?
I think it would have to be Eastern time. So they're probably catering that to the home market out in LA to get good times, while still making it TV viewable.
Yeah.
On the East Coast, which is probably why you're seeing it 11:30 p.m.
Yeah, it's got to be
start time for Group B.
Oh, excuse me, because
all right.
Yeah, and by the way, on Saturday, because they're saying 6:30, so that's East Coast. It's 5:30 Central for us. Sunday on FS1 and Fox Deportes, you can actually watch the NASCAR Mexico Series. King Taco there's a race on Fox. I think it's also at the Coliseum, but it's the Mexican Series, which I didn't even know they had for NASCAR. That's kind of exciting to see. So if you want to catch that, that'll be Sunday on FS1, right before the Cup last chance qualifier.
Yep. So NASCAR is back. So you get a NASCAR race this week. You get a week off. And then it'll be the Daytona 500.
Yeah, we get back-to-back Super Bowls. The Super Bowl and then the Super Bowl of NASCAR. If you don't watch it, man, it is great. I know you do, Rich, now. But, yeah, you got to check it out. Okay.
All right. Because we're kind of running long on time.
Off of the left turns?
I will. Before I do, we'll go ahead and shift driver lineup changes to next week because we ran a little bit long on coaching changes. So, Mike, that was the NASCAR Corner, presented as always by Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated, Moline, Illinois, down on Fifth Avenue, and you can also find them on eBay.
Okay.
Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated.
Okay, let's
Mike, that takes us down to quick hits. So, Mike, how are your boys doing in the Rocket League?
So we had a bye this week.
Okay.
We needed Clear Lake to lose, and we make the playoffs. That's how it. If Clear Lake loses, we make the playoffs. We're good to go. Clear Lake lost, we make the playoffs. So, or we don't. We get a bye through playoffs, and we get directly to state. So February 23rd, we will be down at state. And you can catch it there. Yeah, I'm excited. It's gonna be great. I can't wait for my guys to get down there. It is gonna be a long day. We have to drive down and back on the same time, so that's gonna be like a 5-hour trip, or that's gonna be like leaving at 7:30 in the morning from the school and getting back at like midnight if we make the finals. So, yeah, it'll be rough, but we'll do our best. But the other big news is this is the last week. If you want to buy anything to support Okoboji Esports, so Rich, you see this logo here. This is the team shirt in white, but if you want it in black, maroon, which are our colors, are black, maroon. I mean, you can kind of see these are our colors, maroon and black. If you want to get a shirt in one of those colors, a hat, we have new era hats, so they the exact same style as the baseball caps. They're the comfort fits or the flex fits. So, Rich, I know those are your favorite. You can get stocking caps. We did go with the offset logo, so that's kind of
I like the way those turned out. I like the offset logo actually.
I think it looks great. I'm looking forward to it. If you want to buy something, you got to do it by Tuesday. If you don't do it by Tuesday, February 6th, 2024, the store will close. You won't be able to buy anything anymore. And then hopefully a week or so it'll be out. The goal is hopefully have it ready, have them out and ready to go a week, maybe 2. And then once we do that, it'll be, I mean, shipping takes time. So we'll see what shipping looks like. So the proceeds, so here's the deal. A couple of things for to note about this shirt sale before we get going. One, if you much of what is being raised, or much of the cost, actually goes back to the team. The people making our shirts do a great job at keeping prices low for the team for the shirt cost, and then we get a good portion of that back. Then the bigger thing, and this is the other part of it, whatever their profits are, they take 10% of their profits and give it back to esports. So it's gonna be great. I'm looking forward to it. So if you want to buy something, the proceeds are gonna go towards us. We got new computers. The Booster Club bought us new computers, which are awesome and amazing, and we love them. Now we need better monitors. Our monitors aren't great. The computers we got were our handheld devices, and we'd like to upgrade our monitors so we can utilize the better frame rates that we're getting from that. So, with that being said, Rich, do you have any shout-outs before we end the show?
Yeah, I'll go give a belated shout-out to Uncle Daniel.
Oh, yeah.
Birthday on this past Sunday.
Didn't you live with him?
Yeah. We were roommates when we lived out in Oregon, when we were kind of on the fence on whether are we going to stay here long term, or are we going to start looking for our jobs elsewhere. And so he provided us a good way with an affordable rent out there.
Nice.
And
we do have one show shout out.
Okay.
Jeffrey Close, a friend of mine from high school, liked the video today. Thanks, Jeff, for liking the video. Folks, if you are watching us on Facebook, but you want to take us in the car with you, check us out on Spotify, and you can like and subscribe us there, and we'll be there. Rich, they are listening to us on Spotify, but they want to watch us, but not on YouTube. Where should they go?
You'd actually want to go to YouTube.
You don't want to watch
where
our
you can
Facebook,
find the video if you don't want to be on the Facebook.
Okay, and for all our poll questions and other interactions, check us out on Facebook.com/Balls and Sticks and Facebook.com/fans of Balls and Sticks. Rich, what's it time to do?
Mike, why don't you go ahead and roll that outro?
Broadcasting live from somewhere in Iowa. This is Balls and Sticks, the podcast, with your hosts, Mike and Rich.